Hey everyone, it's actually Jeb Bush, and welcome back to yet another episode of SoRare Steals. If this is your first time checking out SoRare Steals, in each video we take a look at an NBA team and try to find players that we think have a lot of potential value over the course of the season. We're looking for players that we think can get a massive increase in minutes and usage, whether that's because of players resting, a player being traded, someone getting injured, a team trying to tank, or whatever else the reason is. We want to try to buy these player cards at a low. So that way, when they get that possible increase in minutes, we can either plug them into a lineup and try to win one of the top prizes in a contest, or sell them and secure some profits. Now, before we take a look at some of the players I've picked out, if you could just take a quick second and make sure you hit that like button and that you're subscribed to the channel, it's something really easy you could do that really helps me out and goes a really long way. So thank you in advance. And also, if you're into daily fantasy sports or the NBA and you stumbled across this video and you don't have an NBA SoRare account, you can go ahead and click my affiliate link here or in the description below. By using that link, you'll get 20 free common cards that you can use for the free common contests. And if you find out that you really enjoy SoRare and maybe you want to purchase some cards and join some of the limited contests or rare contests, when you purchase 5 limited or higher cards from the live auction marketplace, you'll get a 6th one for free. But that's only if you use my link in the description below. So now that we got that out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at the SoRare Steals for the Houston Rockets. All right, so as always, we're on SoRare data, and I have the Houston Rockets lineup pulled up. And the first player that sticks out to me is Jason Tate. Now, Jason Tate is an interesting pick for a couple of reasons. First off, we can actually take a look at the price chart, and we can see that they stopped auctioning his cards off around November 14th, and that's because he got injured, and he is currently still injured. So as a result, his price actually hasn't really dipped too much. I mean, we see this outlier here, which could have been legit or might be someone just kind of transferring a card to one of their friends. But since the circulation for him is a lot lower than some others, as you can see, there's only 325. I think there's around like 650 for most players who have played this entire season. But as a result, his price has kind of stayed pretty stable. As you can see, I have a card. I got this as one of my first rewards, and I didn't sell it, and I'm kind of glad I didn't because I think he's an interesting card once he's back and healthy. But I was pleasantly surprised to see that his price didn't absolutely just tank once he was injured, and that's because they don't continue to auction them off, which I think is something really cool about NBA SoRare is, they kind of help you maintain value for a card. So if unless the player gets injured and is really out for the season and that card's not going to have any value until maybe next year, you're not going to see an absolute free fall. There's not insane volatility as there might be with other sports NFT projects. So anyway, before he got injured, we can see that Tate had a cap of 20, and he was putting up some decent numbers with some decent defensive numbers as well. Now, Tate is interesting for a couple reasons. First off, I think at the beginning of the season, his role was a lot more established. And since then, we've seen players, like Jalen Green and Kevin Porter Jr. and Jabari Smith Jr. all really step up and start to put up some pretty solid numbers. So when Jason Tate comes back, I don't necessarily think he's going to be getting the same minutes that he was at the beginning of this season when he was putting up some solid SoRare scores. As a result, I think we're going to see this cap dip a bit, and there's even that outside possibility that Jason Tate gets traded. Now, while I don't think they'll necessarily trade Tate, I don't think it's completely impossible. One reason is, he is a little older than that core. He's 26, while you have Jalen Green, Kevin Porter Jr., Jabari Smith Jr., who are all like 20. So maybe the Houston Rockets decide that we're going to trade Tate and get more assets now, maybe increase our chances at the Wemby sweepstakes or whatever else. I think Tate's just in a very unique situation. I think ultimately he's going to be a really solid play. We can go ahead and take a look at some of his scores. And before he got injured, we can see he's consistently putting up some high 20s. Even we have a 41, a 38 here. Maybe not a player that you want to play in a champion lineup because he doesn't have that super high ceiling. But he is a player that maybe you want to put in a contender because he's going to give you that consistent, high 20s, which is above his cap. So if he has 2, 3 games right now this week, the Rocket players have 3 games. He would be an ideal contender because you'll probably get 1 or 2 of these duds, but you're almost guaranteed that he's going to drop like a 30 plus. So, not much more to say here. I just think Tate's an interesting watch, someone you definitely shouldn't buy now, and someone that maybe even I should sell if I think he's going to take an initial dip because his role is not as defined as it was. I think he's a player that you should definitely be watching. So the next player on my list is Garrison Matthews. Now, I like Garrison Matthews as a SoRare steal for a couple of reasons. One, he's sitting at the floor pretty much right now, at least. If you're going to buy a player has playing time, or even a player that doesn't necessarily play consistently, you're probably paying $3 or more for him. And Garrison Matthews is a reserve player that pretty consistently is going to get minutes off the bench for Houston. Another reason I think he's an interesting pick is because he's the backup to Jalen Green at shooting guard. And as we said before, this is a player that could potentially get a pretty decent increase in minutes if Jalen Green gets injured or even takes some time off because he's injured because they're trying to get into the Wemby sweepstakes when they really try to tank post All-Star break, post trade deadline. So I think Garrison Matthews just has a lot of outs over the duration of the season, and we can take a look at the price and we can see that that's already happened once. And I was one of those people who took an advantage of it. One thing I love about SoRare data is that they show like your purchases and your sells. So here we can see that I bought him for $3, which is basically what he's at now, and I sold him for 5. Now, that is not this massive profit. Like I didn't make 20, 30, 40, $50, but I did make almost like double. And that's a pretty high percentage. And if you're able to consistently do this on SoRare repeatedly, like I've been doing, I've been having a lot of fun in the marketplace just buying players like this and then flipping them when they're used for or when they're considered like a possibility for an optimal lineup. But you can take those profits and save them up and buy actually like valuable players that you want in your lineups and that you're excited about long term. So I just think Garrison Matthews is a pretty interesting pick right now. Like I said, he's basically back to the floor. It looks like I could have gotten him $1 cheaper. So maybe you can throw an offer out there, and maybe you can even get him for $2.52. I think he's a very interesting play because the Rockets are probably going to tank because he's the direct backup. So if Jalen Green gets injured, he could take up some significantly more minutes and get more usage. He's a good shooter, and he has the potential to get some steals or do something else to really increase his SoRare score. Let's go ahead and take a look at his SoRare scores real quick. We can see that this year at least he put up a 35. This was actually about the time that his price peaked. So I'm curious if this was because Jalen Green was sitting out. Let's go ahead and take a look. Considering he had 20 points on three-pointers, I can assume he had probably a lot more minutes than usual. So this kind of shows you the ceiling he's capable of when he's starting or at least taking up a lot more minutes and getting more usage time. And if you're getting a 30 out of an 11 cap player, I mean that is very optimal. That's what you want in a lineup, and that is what people will pay for in a lineup. So I think Garrison Matthews is a great pick. Very low risk. Like, what happens if we're wrong? He goes down to $2.50, $2. He's sitting at the floor. It's really a can't lose situation. maybe you don't take a W, but you're not going to take a massive L no matter what. Like I said, Garrison Matthews, I think, is a certified SoRare steal. All right, so I've got 2 players left on my list, and we're actually going to look at them together, and that is Usman Garuba and Bruno Fernando. Now, the reason I wanted to look at these 2 together is because on the Houston Rockets depth chart, Bruno Fernando is the backup and Usman is the backup to Bruno Fernando. He's the 3rd string. But what I find particularly interesting is when we look at the current prices for these players in correlation to their circulation as well as their cap and all that. So let's look at Bruno first. We can see he clearly started out the season injured, and that's why we see some of these going for $14 because people were buying up in speculation that he might have a pretty significant game his first couple of games. And we can see since that he has really died down as the auctions have started and his circulation has increased, and right now his floor is at 372 with almost 400 out. Once again, like we said, the normal circulation for a player who has played throughout the entire season so far is around 650, I think, maybe 700. So he's at about half that, but his price is pretty much at the floor. And he has a cap of 11, and his stats aren't anything super significant. Now let's go ahead and take a look at Usman. Now, Usman has been auctioned off from the beginning. As we can see, a lot of auctions at the very beginning. People are getting him for like around $2, and now his floor is at $7, which is pretty interesting because technically he's the backup to Bruno. So you would think that he would be an even lower value than Bruno, but that is not the case here. So the reason I want to take a look at both of these guys is because I think they're kind of in the same basket in that they'll be a lot more valuable down the road when the Rockets are tanking and when the trade deadline has passed and all that. So while Usman, I definitely would not be buying at almost $8. We can look at his scores and we can kind of see that, he hasn't really put up any significant numbers lately to warrant that $8 price. But we take a look at Bruno Fernando. We can see kind of a similar thing. He did have a 27 up here this month on December 2nd, but otherwise hasn't done anything crazy. But I think for sure Usman's got to come down. He has a much higher circulation than Bruno. Like we said, he's played this whole season and he's sitting at 650. But yeah, it's a very interesting situation. Bruno, I would say, is if you're going to buy one of the two, 1,000% buy Bruno. There's zero reason you should be buying Usman before you buy Bruno. But ultimately, I think they're both worth watching. And as their prices fluctuate, I think there are just opportunities where scooping them up makes a lot of sense. So I think I'm going to go ahead and end the video there. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch. If you haven't already hit that like button or hit that subscribe button, please go ahead and do so. Once again, something super easy you can do that really goes a long way for me. If you don't have an NBA SoRare account, make sure to click the link in the description below in order to create one. If you found this video useful at all, feel free to check out the rest of the videos in this series. I've made them about quite a few NBA teams and am trying to do one for every single NBA team. And with that being said, thanks once again for taking the time to check out this video, and join me next time as we take a look at the SoRare Steals for the Indiana Pacers. Please clap.